Hello and welcome to my review of the final episode of Season 2 of Star Trek Discovery, Such Sweet Sorrow, Part 2. The runtime of this episode was completely necessary, and even then we are left with a bunch of cliffhangers. As you'd expect, there will be spoilers throughout, and there's going to be a lot to get through here. So I'll start by saying that this episode is a visual spectacle. From the opening scenes, the show picks up seconds after the previous, with all hands rushing to prepare Discovery and Enterprise for combat. Shaky cam and odd angled camera work is used here correctly to emphasise the frantic nature of the crew, from the launch of every phaser-fitted shuttle and weird pod thing to the forging of the Red Angel Mark II. The fabrication process here seems super hurried, but honestly, I approve of Discovery, a majority R&D vessel, being able to churn out such a device once the specifications are known, even in such a crunch time situation. What's more is that when the suit comes to actually being used by Burnham, she only sort of knows what she's doing, having been cramming her mother's tutorials the night before. Her genuine freak out as the suit's unable to coordinate a jump to the future came across as an organic tension builder. Here we have a hurdle that is completely understandable. Not the big bad, not some techno babble, but an honest case of WTF am I doing? Why is this not working? Though I have to say, I do not like these little Roomba bot things. While cute looking and probably marketable, they serve no narrative purpose and are never addressed again. I thought they may be used to say close a door later on, but no, they're just there to be another hyper-specific and unexplained piece of kit. Of course, it turns out that the suit is unable to jump to the future, as it has yet to establish that future, leading Spock to the realisation that Burnham needed to send the signals before they jump, thus ensuring that the entire series of events unfolds as it currently has. They address it as a leap of faith, but much like the earlier one that required Burnham to be in mortal peril, Spock cites that it's more of a logical conclusion. These concepts are rushed in explanation to the audience, but I think with the added benefit of the perception we as an audience get, it wasn't that hard to follow, when combined with the themes and plot of the show so far. Not that you'd ever watch this episode on its own anyway. Speaking of perception, there was a lot of clever camera use in this, like a lot of visual candy. Of note was the camera following the falling debris that caught Stamets unaware, and the corridor fight between Leland and Georgiou's security team. The choice was made to keep the camera static as gravity flipped from bulkhead to bulkhead, and it created the feeling that we were observers to something not supposed to be occurring. Also, I enjoyed the effect used to demonstrate the folding of space for the wormhole jumps. I interpreted it as 3D space, being rendered flat as a representation of just as 3D is a dimension beyond 2D, time is the fourth dimension and therefore beyond both. Though this one three-way cut, no, it's out of place with almost everything else you've done and it looks tacky. Every space scene too was amazing. You can see that the budget for the special effects bookended this show, and the return of the Klingon Cleave ship was a sight to see. Speaking of Klingons, it was good to see them acting like Klingons, laughing in the face of combat and seeing them seeming to relish the fight for the sake of glory, not some abstract notion of purity or fear of homogenization. We also see the return of Saru's sister Sarana piloting a Baul fighter, and he is as surprised at this turn of events as the viewer. There's a story there that I'm curious about, and the Kelpians seem to be embracing their new status quo, calling themselves warriors at one point, something old Kaminar would never have done. Moving on to the characterizations here, and everyone was done well. Jet Reno stole the scenes she was in, and her dry pessimism seems heightened in a crisis. I would love to see Tig Notaro back for another season. Admiral Cornwell was here to observe, but once the battle began, she really had no role to play. So when the torpedo struck and she went to repair it, I think it was a safe bet that she was not coming back. Still, true to her character, she faces her end with dignity. Number 1 played a role in trying to support her and Pike, and we hear her name mentioned in passing, though I'm certain this is a typo with the subtitles, as Take the Con, Una, sounds a lot like Nuna. And as Una was her name in the books, I think this is far more likely. Anyway, even that was an abbreviation of her full name. Pike, for the most part, was directing the defence, but had his quiet moment with Cornwell when she tells him to leave the photon to her. For the most part, Anson Mount's portrayal of Pike has been amazingly consistent, but his story has come to a close for this chapter. Ethan Peck has stated that he sees Nimoy's portrayal of Spock as the light at the end of the tunnel for his interpretation of the iconic character, and by the end of this episode, I can see it. He's still not quite there yet, but several mannerisms in the delivery of his dialogue were very reminiscent of classic Spock. Burnham has her moments of uncertainty and even fear at her role in the suit, but naturally she is protected by plot armour, so some of the tension wasn't there. However, at this point, she is acting to fulfil her role, both in the narrative and out of it. Her farewell to Spock was sweet, though I did feel Spock seemed a bit too overly reliant on her for having actively shunned her for 10 years. Her final advice to him was to find someone to befriend who countered his personality if he was worried about losing his way. A nice illusion for the best space-age bromance. Stamets and Culber share a tender moment with a very vulnerable Stamets in critical condition after taking shrapnel to the chest. Genuine uncertainty at his survival lingered in the back of my mind, and although I think he likely will survive, we are left in the dark as to his fate, along with the rest of the crew. The inclusion of Queen Poe involved so heavily in the attack seemed a stretch to me, as she seems to coincidentally know how to fly a Starfleet shuttle. However, looking back, the term coincidentally doesn't really apply to a plot involving time travel, as it's all literally preordained. So, as the Red Angel established, these were literally the exact right people in the right place. Paradoxes. Yay. Leland, as a character, has been reduced to little more than the antagonist and a puppet for control, but the fight scenes involving him painted him as an unrelenting powerhouse, though not invulnerable. Michelle Yeoh gets to play around here with what she does best, and Georgiou likewise helps to save the day, citing revenge and fun as her motivations. I think, as we've surmised by now, there is more to her motivations than her Terran persona would suggest, but she still giggles like a mad girl at watching Leland perish, so you know, not completely stable. Almost everyone gets their moments, and this is very much an ensemble effort, despite the focus being on Burnham and her pivotal role. It's fun to see Tilly scampering around the Jeffries tubes, for example, a true Trek tribute to engineering of old, as well as the Klingons chanting "Today is a good day to die." The traditional sound effects were a stroke of nostalgia in the doors, phasers and background sounds for the Enterprise bridge, and subtle nods like this go a long way in helping me, personally, accept the visual overhaul. The musical score for the climax was intense and worthy of the summary. However, if the song has been played before in prior episodes, I've never heard it, and it would have been good to build off of it for Discovery's escape into the future. The wormhole effect that distorts the crew's vision is also similar to the one seen in the motion picture 2, another visual nod to similar phenomena. The wrap-up at the end that has them all being debriefed attempts to tie up some loose ends and fit the tale of Discovery in with the rest of the Trek mythos. They declare that the control incident should be classified due to Section 31's involvement, effectively making it a cover-up. Section 31 itself is in shambles, with Tyler being handed what remains. They suggest that it needs a reform into a more open organisation, however clearly this never happens, so I guess it's down to the Section 31 show to show us how it all went completely rogue. Also, Spock invokes the Temporal Prime Directive and they cover up the creation of the time suit too. The secrecy of Discovery's disappearance, time travel and control by proxy also hides the spore drive research. So in essence, this is a massive undertaking for Starfleet to deny all knowledge going forwards. When the final red burst goes off 124 days later, Pike even declares the Enterprise moving to investigate a new moon rather than the signal. It's a bit weak, in my opinion, to rely on the same continuity resolving plot device as Season 1 did. Oh, we just won't ever talk about it. But I appreciate the attempt to smooth out the progress of events. I'm sure there will be books and such to help iron out any creases at some point. Please note that this is not a summary of the entire season of Discovery in Review, just the finale. This episode was an amazing visual spectacle and a pretty much satisfying conclusion to Series 2. It made the right choice to not try to cram too many resolutions into the one episode, and instead opted to carry over the fate of the Discovery and her crew to the next season. A strong end for the show, despite the plot holes that were unavoidably set up by the prior Part 1. Thanks for listening to me review the finale of Discovery Season 2. There's more Trek content on the way, and I have a couple of ideas for some Discovery stuff too, but as of next week there won't be a Saturday video, just the 2 weekly ones. I plan to find something else to fill the weekend slot with, and if you've got any suggestions, let me know. In the meantime, thanks again. I've been Rick, and this has been Star Trek Discovery. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.